Well, today is week 3 of OC Summer Heat. It's been good so far, right? Pastor Herbert and then Pastor Charlotte last week. And what's happening in the series is our faith is being elevated and we're being called higher as a church. And God has been speaking to us through each of these speakers, and it's going to happen again today. Today, we are honored to have John Maxwell with us. And I gotta confess to you, it's a little intimidating to introduce someone the caliber of John Maxwell. So much could be said. I mean, he's one of the most influential people when it comes to leadership that we've had in this country. And the number of books that he's written, the number of quotes that we have stolen from him, the number of things that he's led and done. He's been a pastor, and he is truly one of the leading voices in leadership that there is in our country and in our world today. And you're going to hear about how God is using him to not just change lives, but to transform countries. But I think the best thing that I could do to introduce John is to simply say, he's my friend. He's a friend of this church. He's a partner with us in kingdom work. And again, you'll hear about that in just a minute. But 20-something years ago, when I was just having thoughts about how God may be able to use me in leadership, I was charged with teaching this ragtag group of about 10 junior hires how to be junior counselors at camp. And I had no idea what to say to them. I was barely older than them, and I came across one of John's books, 21 Indispensable Qualities of a Leader. And it was the first book that I ever taught out of. And John, I'm telling you, I gave every lesson as if it was my own. And I don't know if I gave you any credit, but I'm going to give you credit now, 20 years later. Those were your thoughts, not mine. I didn't know about that stuff. But I just walked them through chapter by chapter through that book. And John has been a mentor from afar for many years. Maybe he has for you too. But now at this stage in my life, to get to see him up close and to experience his leadership and his voice in my life and Kara's life up close has been just such a joy. He has made an impact on this church. Many of you know that in so many ways, an impact on Scott and Jenny and so many people here at our church. And he's come with a word for us today. So Oaks Church, would you get up on your feet and welcome to the stage the one and only John Maxwell.
Proud of you, man. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Wow. Good morning. It's so good to be here. My name is John, and I'm your friend.
Yes, sir.
On the count of 3, give me your name. 1, 2, 3. Nice to meet you. And it's especially great to have all the teens here from camp. Let's give them a hand. Aren't we proud of them? We're so proud of them. I was 17 years of age when I said yes to God to preach the gospel. And it's such an important time in your life. And when I think of who you are and I think of how you're growing as a Christian and getting experiences that are going to increase your faith, I'm very proud of you. I understand, Chris, why you would look at your youth group and talk about how proud you are of them. To see these kids loving Jesus with that zeal and with that passion, I mean, it's just you have blessed all of us, including an old man today. Okay, you really have, and so we're so excited to have you. And Chris and Kara, thank you for inviting me back to Oaks. Aren't they not just beautiful young leaders? I mean, don't you just absolutely love them? I mean, you do such a great job with leadership and to see the transition, Scott, from you and Jenny to these two beautiful people and to watch how the church is prospering and how it's going. It's an incredible blessing to me, and I want you to know I'm so glad to be a part of the family, and I feel part of the family, because you financially help our nonprofit organization do transformation of nations. And in fact, I'm going to leave this service when I'm done speaking and we're going to go to Costa Rica. And for the next 3 days, we'll be in Costa Rica. We'll be speaking with the top government leaders, the president of the country. We'll be speaking to the top educational leaders, the top business leaders. We'll literally be just going through the country talking about values and how that values can just take a person and help change their life. And I just want you to know that you're a part of this work. You're a part of it. And so as I go, you go. And then we had something very exciting that it just happened Thursday, so you're like the first to know. I was in New Mexico and I spoke to a very small group, 100 people. But the group was small, but their influence was huge. At a little resort in New Mexico last Thursday, I spent a half a day with the top educators in the public school movement in America. Now just stay right with me. Fasten your seatbelts. I was able to spend a half a day in each state, including Texas, in each state there's a top leader in the education field that really leads the entire school system. I was able to talk to all those top leaders of every state about values. And they asked me to come in and talk about what we're doing internationally, because internationally, the public schools in Guatemala, Costa Rica, Paraguay, the places we're working, the public schools, they teach our values, Christian values, in the public school, in the classroom, it's in the curriculum. It's not before school, it's not after school, it's not pray around the flagpole, it's none of that lame stuff. It's in the classroom with language and math. And they're doing small tables, group tables, and these kids are learning values. And it started in South Carolina. We ran a model there where it's been very successful. And now the public school is seriously considering putting values curriculum in your public schools in America. And listen to me, it's because of you. It's because of your investment. It's because of your time. It's because of your financial help that we're able to do that. So when I go to Costa Rica, and we'll just see incredible transformational things happen, including evangelism. In fact, when I'm done with I'll speak sometimes to 5,000, 6,000 leaders. And when I'm finished speaking to them, I'll share with them that there's one other thing I would have liked to have shared with them, but I wouldn't do it publicly. But I'd like to have shared with them about my faith. And so I said, we'll take a 15-minute break. And if you would like to come back and hear me talk about my faith in God, come back. 90% of the people come back for that session. And 50% of them receive Christ at that session. We have left countries where we would have seen 8,000 to 12,000 people receive Christ just in a two-day visit. And again, it's your investment in us that makes it. So I'm grateful. I'm here to say thank you. I'm here to be with you because you're family to me. And what a great group of people we have today. And worship and the splash party. I mean, it was a splash party. I got baptized 2 or 3 times on the front row. I got immersed once. But how beautiful to be celebrating baptism. I mean, I thought, because what is heaven? Heaven rejoices when one sinner repents. So I want you to know, Oaks, you made heaven happy today. Heaven's happy today. Heaven is happy because of you, and it's so exciting. Okay, I'm ready to teach. Okay, I'm very excited because I'm going to teach you about a very simple story in the Bible. It's a miracle. In fact, it's the only miracle that's recorded in all 4 Gospels. And when I give you the story, every one of you know it really quite well because it's the story of Jesus and the loaves and fish. It's just a very, very simple story. But I'm going to talk to you today about how does a biblical miracle work? How does it work in your life? How does a biblical miracle work through you to other people? And how many of you love to see God do miracles in your life? How many of you love that? Okay, well, then you really want to hang on. Fasten your seatbelt, because I'm going to show you how a biblical miracle works. In fact, look at your neighbor and tell them you're about to learn something. Go ahead and tell them that. You're about to learn something. Look right back at them and say, why do you think I brought you here today? How many of you ever played the hot and cold game? Do you know that game? I really don't even know if that's the title. That's just what I call it, the hot and cold game. But you know, the hot and cold game is like, let's say that the water bottle is the object. One person leaves the room, and the other kids in the room hide something. In this case, it would be the water bottle. And then the person who's out of the room comes in. He doesn't know where the object is, but the clues from their kids or friends tell them if they're getting close. And if they're a long way, they're cold, cold, cold. And if they get a little closer, they're warmer, warmer. Get right up against them. You know, they're hot. You know the game. How many of you have played this game before? Oh my gosh, this is so good. Let's play the game. This is going to be so good. You've never played the hot and cold game in church. This is a first. This is a first. Are you ready? I'm just coming in the room. Start talking to me. Just got hot, didn't I? Huh? It's a fun game. Jesus is about to teach an incredible lesson. There are thousands of people coming to hear him along the Sea of Galilee. And there's a kid. There's a kid coming. His name is Jimmy. His name is Jimmy, and Mom has packed him a lunch of fish and chips. And while Jimmy comes with all those people, if Jimmy could have heard the voice of God, he would have heard God begin to say to Jimmy, you're close to seeing a miracle. It won't be long, just in a few hours. You're going to see me do something that's absolutely amazing. And if he could have heard the voice of God, he would have heard God saying, Jimmy, hey, Jimmy, you're hot. You're hot. And if the crowd that's coming, if they could have heard the voice of God, he would have been saying to the whole crowd, hey, you're hot. You're real close to receiving a miracle from God. And by the way, as you travel to church today, if you could have heard the audible voice of God, he would have been saying to every one of you, you're hot. You're hot. You have no idea how close you are to seeing me do a miracle in the lives of people. So how does a biblical miracle work? It's on your screen. I would encourage you to take a picture of it, or I would encourage you to copy it, because I'm going to teach this section in just a minute. But this is how a biblical miracle works. And the reason you need to get it is because within the next 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to have a time in your life where you're going to say, God, you're going to have to help me. I really need a touch from you. I really need a miracle from you. And you're going to come right back to this, and you're going to say, this is how I received the miracle. Here we go. When there is a need sensed by a few, and each individual understands his responsibility or her responsibility, and gives his all, gives her all, regardless of the odds, then Jesus works a miracle. That is how a biblical miracle works. When there's a need sensed by a few, And each individual understands his responsibility and gives his all regardless of the odds, then Jesus works a miracle. And here's the scripture, here's the story. It's on the screen. Let's just read it and then I'll teach it. So they got in a boat, this is Jesus and the disciples, and they went off to a remote place by themselves. Someone saw them going, and the word got around from the surrounding towns. People went out on foot running, and they got there ahead of them. When Jesus arrived, he saw this huge crowd. And at the sight of them, his heart broke, like sheep with no shepherd they were. He went right to work teaching them, and when his disciples thought that this had gone on long enough, it was now quite late in the day, they interrupted. We are a long way out in the country, and it's very late. Pronounce a benediction and send these folks off so they can get some supper. Jesus said, you do it. Fix supper for them. They replied, are you serious? You want us to go spend a fortune on food for their supper? But he was quite serious. How many loaves of bread do you have? Take an inventory. That didn't take long. 5, they said, plus 2 fish. Jesus placed them all to sit down in groups of 50 or 100. They looked like a patchwork quilt of wild flowers spread out on the green grass. And he took 5 loaves and 2 fish, lifted his face in heaven to pray, blessed, broke, and gave the bread to the disciples. And the disciples, in turn, gave it to the people. He did the same with the fish. They all ate their fill. The disciples gathered 12 baskets of leftovers. More than 5,000 people were at the supper. Now, this is a beautiful, simple story of Jesus working a miracle. And that story applies to you and me today. So let's begin. When there is a need. When I was a young pastor, my second church was a pretty nice church, and it had been fairly large for quite a few years, but for the last 15 years, it hadn't grown. It lacked life. It lacked vibrancy, and I could tell that the people were quite settled and that they needed a shot of miracle adrenaline. They needed some faith. They needed some belief. So I decided that I would preach on every miracle in the Bible. Started in the Old Testament, didn't miss any. Took me 2 years. And you folks thought Chris's series was long. He's a pup. Just a pup. I mean, that's just 50 chapters. That's nothing. I preached on every miracle in the Bible. And as I did, the people's faith increased, and I really watched the church begin to transform. And at the end of my series on preaching on every miracle in the Bible, I sat down and I asked myself, is there anything that in the Old and New Testament, all the miracles, is there anything that they have in common? And I came to the conclusion, after some study about it, that there's only one thing that every miracle has in common. Just one. Now, because you get great preaching here and you hear great Bible teaching, if I ask you, what do you have to have a miracle? Many of you would say some great things. You'd say things like, well, you have to have faith. And I say, faith is so important. We all know that. But I can show you miracles in the Bible. The person had no faith at all. In fact, I can show you miracles in the Bible where the person was surprised that they got the miracle. So faith is important, but that's not key. And so I says, well, you got to pray. I mean, there are some things that don't even come to pass without prayer and fasting. That's true. That's very, very true. But I can show you miracles in the Bible where nobody prayed, and there was still a miracle happen. There's only one thing that's common in every miracle in the Bible. Are you ready?
Yes.
I know you're ready. That's not the question. The question is the person on your left ready? Just look at him. How many of you think that I need to slow down for the person on your left? Just slow down just a little bit. Just hold it just a little longer. That's okay. Look at the person to your left and say, it's okay, I'll help you. Tell them, I'll help you. I'll help you. It's okay. Okay. I'll help you. There's only one thing that every miracle in the Bible has in common. Are you ready? Yeah. Every miracle in the Bible begins with a problem. Every one of them. Every time you see God do a miracle, there was a problem. There was a hurt. There was a healing that needed to take place. There was a question. There was an issue. Every miracle in the Bible begins with a problem. Now, you see, we don't like problems. I mean, well, let me tell you, how many of you don't like problems? Just raise your hand. You don't like problems. Okay, we don't like problems. We don't like problems. And yet, don't miss this. We don't like problems, but every miracle in the Bible begins with a problem. So the problem for many of you is that you don't have a problem. And if you don't have a problem, my name's John, I'm your friend. If you don't have a problem, you have a problem. Because if you don't have a problem, you're not a candidate for a miracle from God. So maybe, Chris, what we'll do today is we'll have a different kind of invitation we have at church. We'll ask people to come forward that don't have a problem. And all that you don't have a problem, you come forward and we'll lay hands on you. And we'll pray over you. And we'll say, God, give them a problem. Because if you don't have a problem, you have a problem. But if you have a problem, you're a candidate for a miracle. And if you have a small problem, you're a candidate for a small miracle. If you have a medium-sized problem, you're a candidate for a medium-sized miracle. If you got an unbelievable, humongous, I can't even believe it problem, you're a candidate for a humongous, I can't even believe it miracle. How many of you are a candidate for a miracle from God? See, I told you, hey, you're hot. You're hot. You're hot. When there's a need sensed by a few. The disciples looked at the crowd, and it was getting late, and they realized the people were getting hungry, so they went up to Jesus, and they interrupted him while he was teaching. Now, let me just stop here for a moment. The greatest teacher ever, with a life-changing, greatest message ever, and the disciples go up and interrupt Jesus. Excuse me, Jesus. Excuse me. Excuse Jesus. The people are hungry. And I know you're busy teaching, and it's good. It's good. It's really good. We're taking notes. It's good, Jesus. You have some wonderful thoughts. But it's getting late, and we've been thinking. We think you ought to let the crowd go and let them go to town and get a quarter pounder with cheese on a sesame seed bun. Are you with me? Yeah. Don't miss this. How would you like to be known as, oh yeah, those are the guys who interrupt Jesus? When there's a need sensed by a few, and each individual understands his or her responsibility. So when they interrupted Jesus, they thought Jesus would say, oh, guys, thank you so much. Man, I had no idea. You're right. They're hungry. Go. You see, Jesus just absolutely messed them up because they were suggesting to Jesus what he could do and should do. And he looked at them and he said, you give them something to eat. I promise you, when they heard the words of Jesus, you give them something to eat. I promise you, they wish they would have never brought the idea? I can't just say, oh, you know what, Jesus, we're kidding, you know. I think it's okay. And besides, don't you think we ought to pray and fast today? We ought to just pray and fast today. Pray and fast. Isn't it amazing? As soon as he asks us to be a part of a miracle, how quickly we want to slip away. You give them something to eat. This is huge. Now they're panicked. Now they've got a responsibility. Now they're looking out over the whole crowd and they're saying, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? You give them something to eat. Now, I don't know, maybe I'm not being hard on the disciples because I'm kind of like them, because there are a lot of times, like the disciples, I make suggestions to Jesus. I just do. When in my prayer time, there's a lot of times I have a list for him. He's busy. He's very busy. And so I go through my list of suggestions. It's like I not only ask him for my prayer request, I often help him out because he's busy. He's busy. I often give him suggestions of how he could meet that need. Have you ever, at least one time, offered a suggestion to God about how he could answer a prayer? And it's like God is in heaven, and he's hearing me, and I'm giving him these suggestions, and he's looking down at me, and he said, that is so good. I love that. Wait. Here, I got to take some notes here. Do that again. Oh, my gosh. This is so, yes. Okay, I got it, John. Whew. Thank you. I've been puzzled about that for some time. What would I do without you? Oh, I love that idea, John. Why have I never thought of that before? I've given thousands of suggestions to God. He's never taken one of them. He doesn't want my suggestions. We're good with suggestions, as long as we're not involved. Or I love this. I love how we help him through. We help him through when we worship him and sing. We sing songs about God and his greatness and his power and his majesty. And we just sing these songs. And it's like God's in heaven and said, oh, I had no idea. Oh, we quote scripture to him. We're good at quoting scripture to him. Oh, God. Hey, God. Hey. You're able to do exceedingly abundantly more than we can ask or think. You're able. You see, we'll quote scripture to him, we'll sing songs to him, we'll give suggestions to him in prayer. But we don't do what he needs. He doesn't need any of that. He needs our involvement. Most people, that's good. It's just a little early, but that's very good. Just hold it for a few seconds. We're going to just kind of watch me, I'll tell you. Just, it's not a problem at all. I'm right with you. In fact, I'm going to take you on the road. And you. That's 3. You see, we don't want a miracle from God because that takes partnership. We want magic. We want magic. We want God to do it all. And God says, no, I want to involve you. As I grew up, my father would say to me, John, without God, you cannot. But without you, God will not. He wants a partnership. So, when there's a need sensed by a few, and each individual understands his or her responsibility and gives his all, regardless of the odds. Now, this is huge. It's something to give it all up, but it's even more to give it all up when the odds are not in favor of giving it all up. You know the story. Jesus said, you give them something to eat. And the disciples started walking around the crowd and they were saying, do you have anything to eat? Do you have anything to eat? Do you have anything to eat? And nobody planned ahead. Nobody had any food. Well, when Jimmy, remember Jimmy? Jimmy had some food, and he'd come that day with his junior high buddy, Bobby. And Bobby went over to Jimmy, and Bobby said, you know, Jimmy, you know those guys that hang around with Jesus, those big guys? Yeah. They're looking for food. And I'm just going to tell you right now, nobody has any food. The only person I think that has food in the whole crowd is you. And those guys are getting closer. You better figure it out. The big boys are about to ask you if you have any food. Now, I think I know what Jimmy did. I think Jimmy sat on his food. I believe he operated on the principle squash food is better than no food at all. And there's at least two reasons why Jimmy didn't want to give Jesus his food. Don't miss these two. Number one, it's hard to care for others when you're comfortable yourself. There's only one person in the crowd that doesn't need a miracle from Jesus. Only one. The boy with his lunch. He doesn't need Jesus to pray for food, bless food, break food, multiply food. He's got food. It's hard to care for others when you're comfortable yourself. And the second reason he had a hard time giving up the food is the request made no sense at all. The big boys that were hanging with Jesus said, if you'll give up your little bit of food, those loaves and fish, if you'll give those up, Jesus is going to feed the multitudes. He's going to feed everybody. Can't you see Jimmy looking at Bobby and say, these guys are on drugs? Look what they think. They think if we give this up, that he's going to feed everything. It doesn't make sense. And now I just have to stop for a moment and say to you honestly, there have been a lot of times in my life where God asked something of me. And all I had was a few loaves and a few fish. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't any big deal at all. It was just a fish sandwich. And God said, hey, John, could I have it? And there have been a whole bunch of times in my life I ate my own sandwich because it just didn't make sense. It made no sense at all to me. I wonder how many miracles in my life I've missed. I wonder how many miracles I've lost in my life because what God asked of me made no sense. It just wasn't sensible. It wasn't reasonable. So I just took care of myself. You see, that day, there were two kinds of people. There were the vast majority of them, everybody but the boy, they needed a miracle from Jesus. They were either miracle recipients or they were a channel for a miracle. And some of you, when you came to church this morning, God was saying your heart hot. And when he was saying your heart, what he was saying to you is that he wants you to be a channel, to be a miracle to someone else and to bless them in ways that you could not even imagine. And he's wanting your little fish sandwich and you're hanging on to it. You see, nothing happens as long as I hold on to my sandwich. I have to give it to him. You see, there's no miracle until it gets in the hands of Jesus. But isn't it amazing? Jesus says, I won't do it unless you cooperate with me. This amazing God wants us to be partners with him for a miracle to happen. When that miracle happened that day, Can't you imagine when they're all going home, they're coming over to Jimmy and Bobby and they're high-fiving them and saying, hey, thanks for the fish and chips. And when he got home, he said, Mom, I had a great day. And she sat down with him and she said, well, tell me about it. He said, well, you know the fish and chips that you had for me? Oh, she said, honey, don't say anything. Wait. I've been concerned all day as your mama. Because I didn't know that Bobby was going with you. I didn't know he was coming by the house. I just gave the fish and chips just for you. That was just enough in that sack for you. And then I saw Bobby, and then you guys took off, and I watched you running. And I wanted to call back and say, wait a minute, let me give you more. I'm so sorry. Honey, oh, sweetheart, did you have enough to eat? Yeah, I did, Mom. I did because I gave what you gave me to Jesus. And 5,000 people ate the food. Jimmy never forgot that day. When he had children, when he would tuck them in at bed at night, he'd say, do you want to hear a bedtime story? And as soon as he'd say, do you want to hear a bedtime story? I was just about your age, and the kids would start poking each other and say, here comes the fish and chip story again. Here comes the fish and... Of course, they're going to hear the fish and chip story every day, because that was the day that the kid realized that obedience is the secret of successful Christian living. Whatever he says to you, do it. And if you do it, today you will hear him say, you're close. You're close. You're real close to receiving a miracle from God. Father, may it happen now. May men and women who came like the crowd when they came to hear Jesus, who came to a church service, may this be the moment now that they either receive a miracle from you or partner with you to make a miracle happen for others. I ask in your name.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Oaks Church on our YouTube channel. Our prayer is that you were encouraged and your faith was strengthened today.
That's right. And we want to let you know that we would love to connect with you through our online family in our OC Online Facebook group. To do that, you can like our Oaks Church page and click Join Group.
And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and press the bell for notifications. You'll have access to life-giving sermons and worship that will be a blessing to you and your family.
Yeah, we'd love to have you join us live for our Sunday and Wednesday services. We hope you have a great day today. Thank you for watching, and God bless.